as of now. So welcome everybody to the next installment of our what DC and I decided to call the grads. Since we have an introductory meet, we're calling them the undergrads. And so just before we start, I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that are coming up here. So right now we are going to be we're in with George. Number 9, Smooth Running with Don. And then the next undergrad meet will be with George and Charlie and myself and DC on turnouts. And then the following meet with the grads, Chris Gerlach. I don't know if some of you saw, but he's got an update for his virtual that he'd like to share with us. And I thought, we could do another installment of the group build. And then after that, we'll have on number 13, we have fella Fred Willis, a buddy of mine down up here in the local NMRA group. He's going to do something for us on scratch building windows. And then we got Dave Schneider, tentatively scheduled for the 22nd.
Great.
On researching the railroads. And then further out on the number 19, we'll have George, if that works for George. March, April, and May 20th, I think that is. He'll be talking about his build or rebuild of the Bachmann locomotive. So I just wanted to share that with you all. And of course, anytime anything comes up that you think would be a good topic, let us know. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Don and have him share how I can have my how we can have our locomotives running smoother.
Okay, well, let's hope it works. There it is.
Oh, good.
There we go. Okay. I got the clever title because I couldn't think of anything better. I'll just start out with a small demonstration of what I'm talking about.
Quite jerky.
Yeah, that's the Zoom.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see.
Okay, now these are the steps that I use to get my engines running well. They're not the only thing you can do, maybe not all you can do, but this is what I work in the, I run a monthly operating session and people keep coming back, so I guess they're happy with it. So anyway, basically, I take the open frame motors, put in a cam motor. I either tune up or replace whatever gearbox is in there. Make sure the motor's aligned with it. Core to the driving wheels, eliminate any bias in the side rods or other parts. Add weight to the engine, electrical pickups, and install DCC.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go through all those. I've been using Sagami motors. Now, of course, they're not in production any longer, but there are other ones which are just as small. This upper left picture is an attender of a 440. In fact, the 440 that you just saw running. And as you can see, there's a Soundtrax decoder in with it, where I can put them in the cab, like this is the 260 down at the lower right. I do that, including a very old Soundtrax decoder, which still works nicely, so I keep it. But I have newer ones that I'm using, and I will get ones at some point. But it's
Don, a quick question. You have just a general sense of the size of the motor, like millimeter wise or what have you?
okay. They're both 16 by, well, the one in the tender is a 16 by 30 millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
And the one in the cab is a 16 by 20.
Thank you.
Now, getting a good running gearbox is important because if your gears are going to slop back and forth, it's going to do it at the worst time, and you're going to get basically crappy running. So I use shim washers. These you can get from Northwest Shortline, and I just use them between here, so there's extremely little play. So it's just smooth and everything stays in the right location. Now this is on a Pacific Fast Mail 440, which has a nice 40-to-1 gear ratio. And the gearbox is good and solid, so I left it and put the motor in the tender, which has, we'll talk about that later. If you need to use a gearbox, I use the Northwest Shortlines. They've got gearboxes for all occasions. And they come as you see with the new worm gear, worm, bushings, piece of shaft, and so on. The thing with these gearboxes, you may have to open up the hole in the driver cover plate underneath. You know, talking about motors, though, getting back to that, with the old open frame motors, they generally were like a 3-lobe motor, which gave them a little bit of rough running. The more lobes you have on it, the smoother it runs. And then there's usually a lot of slop, and the motors were particularly well balanced. I ended up taking those apart, putting shim washers in there, balancing the armature as much as I could. And even after doing all that, it was still better to change the motor out altogether. Now, one of the big things is getting the motor aligned. It's easy for the gearbox to flop back and forth. I mean, it's attached to an axle. It usually isn't secured very strongly in the frame and can rock back and forth. Again, that's just going to cause problems. One of the things you can do is use a brace attached to the frame. So that kind of locks the gearbox in place. And then the motor bolts to the frame, so it's locked in place. Another thing you can do is put the worm directly on the motor shaft. I've done this in a few locations where the space was extremely tight and there's not much else you could do. Used a torque arm that attached right to the box. The torque arm there, unfortunately, isn't available anymore. It was sized to fit the Northwest Shortline boxes, and the gentleman making them died about 10 years ago. But you can see the idea. It keeps the motor and the gearbox in the same relative location. The one below it is the same idea. It's just a homemade version rather than the nicer brass one. Then you got to connect the motor to the gearbox. Now, I always use the Northwest Shortline U-joints. A lot of people, or a lot of manufacturers, I should say, use a short piece of plastic or rubber tubing. And to me, that just introduces nothing but problems because it isn't designed to flex. And every time it goes around, if there's any misalignment, it's going to move, and it's not going to move the way you want it to because you're continually trying to compress it on one side and stretch it on the other. That's why I use the U-joints. As you can see in the picture, the two are together, but that is just for these tight situations. You can see Northwest Shortline gives you a couple of these little guys, so you can put them back to back as close a fit as you want to. Otherwise, you can use these cups with a piece of shafting. Again, from Northwest Shortline, comes in millimeter sizes. The common motor shaft, 1.5 to 3 millimeters. And you can make them as long as you want to. The main thing is to keep the motor in alignment with the gearbox. And the more you can do this, the less likelihood you're going to have for erratic bumps and grinds as it goes down the track. Now, motors in the tenders, some people don't like that. There's been a thing that came out a long time ago that tender motors in the tenders make the tender want to shimmy as it goes down the track. And that's because the old rubber tubing that goes between it. My tenders don't shiver, but I've got the U-joints in there with a short piece of shafting, about a half, 3/4 of an inch long. Now, with some people, that's objectionable. You know, you look at it, like in the bottom picture, you can see the shaft going through. This hobby is a bunch of compromises. You know, we don't include the whole building. We use a shortened one. We don't use as many buildings or have as much distance between town. And my prime interest in building a locomotive is having one that runs well. And if a compromise is a shaft between the engine and tender, then that's what it's going to be. As you can see from the other pictures, just depends on where you're looking at it. If you're standing up, usually the cab roof covers it. Nobody sees it anyway. And if you're operating, people are more interested in getting the car behind it to the right location rather than how it's powered. But if you want if you don't want that, you have to put the motor in the cab. But what you're giving up is room for weights. And the more weight on the driving wheels gives you more pulling power. So there's your trade-offs. You know, the thing is take whichever one appeals to you.
Don, what about the torque tube? What do you do for a torque tube?
I'm sorry, say again?
Do you have a torque tube in this type of application?
No. In this case, let me go, well, I can't go back too easily, can I? Yeah, no, can't go back. There we go. If I find by what I'm looking for, there's the gears of that 440. The gearbox is locked in place, and there's a U-joint cup on the right end. And then you've got the cup on the motor it's locked in the tender, and that's the picture in the upper left right here. Is that on that particular tender. So it's in there with the U-joint cup on the other end and just the shaft between it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you one thing, is that I don't picking up these engines is kind of a skill. You got to pick the tender and the engine up at the same time. Otherwise, you tend to have the drive shaft fall out. And I can do it because they're my engines, but if they derail and one of your operators tries to derail it, they'll probably pull the drive shaft off, which just means you've got to get a pair of tweezers to put it back in. Again, it's trade-offs.
Well, Al used to use a very thin piece of steel wire instead of a bigger shaft. Have you tried
Yes.
that?
I have not tried it. I know you can do it. I just haven't tried it at this point. What Bernie's talking about is using one of these balls here, cutting off the ball part, drilling a small hole and attaching a wire to it, and then attaching the other end of the wire to the other ball. So you end up with exactly what I have, but a wire is a lot less obtrusive than a 2mm shaft.
Excuse me. I got my hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
All right. there's the Jerry Dykstra system where he has miniature Mantua balls and cups, and I use music wire, an 010 or an 09, and they're beautiful. They
Yeah.
don't bind, they don't do anything, don't have a tendency to fall out, and they run perfectly. As long as you build it right, you put the balls on the music wire right. That's really all that matters.
Yeah, it's basically the same idea,
Right,
except the wire makes it less obtrusive.
right,
And I wasn't aware of that system when I built this engine. These
right.
engines have been running for, at least 20 years.
Gotcha. Yeah, I did
And,
that on 2 Mantuas like this.
And
One
Mantua,
Sorry.
good candidate for that because you've got your cups already installed with them. So that's an excellent system. And I think that the next time I do a 4 Pro, I'll probably use something like that.
I think you'll love it. Talk to Jerry. He's selling this stuff on his Shapeways page.
Oh, Jerry is?
Yeah,
Oh, I'll take a look at it then.
definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah.
Now, I usually have installed flywheels. Now,
Right.
frankly, with the advent of DCC, the importance of the flywheel has diminished quite a bit. The flywheels, the idea was to keep the,
Why is that?
well, that's about what I was going to say. With the
Oh.
old 3-pole open frame motors, you needed a little bit of momentum to carry the motor, keep it rolling smoothly
Right.
at slow speeds. With DCC, the way the power is applied to a CAN motor, you just don't have that problem anymore.
Okay.
So I put them on. One of the main reasons is because I have a lot of them, and if I have room, I'll use them. But if I don't, I haven't seen any difference in the operation of the locomotive.
Right.
But it certainly won't hurt anything. And the flywheels you get here that you can get from Northwest Short Line have an indentation. That is so you can put a cup to the U-joint in there and recess it somewhat in the flywheel, in case you have a close clearance situation. Let's go back just a minute here. Yeah, and this look down here, if I had wanted to put a flywheel right in this area, I still could have had this close coupling because of that recess in the flywheel.
Beautiful.
Now, one of the big things is getting the drivers quartered.
Yeah.
Real locomotives have the right-hand side set 90 degrees forward of the left-hand side. When I say 90 degrees, I'm talking about the pins for the driving rods.
Right.
The exact angle is not critical, but they all have to be the same. Otherwise, things will bind. And once you pull off a driver from one side of an engine, you pretty much have to go back and re-quarter all of them, because there's no guarantee you're going to get it back on anywhere near the same location. Again, going back to our trusty source at Northwest Short Line, they've offered a few things. The first gadget up here is a wheel puller. That's pretty obvious. That's what's used to take the driver off. These two guys are different types of quarterers that are available. This is an all plastic one. This is a metal one. It's more precision made, but often as not, I end up using the plastic because of the smaller drivers I use. This gets to be a problem if you're using like a 48-inch driver. If you're using a 40-inch driver, just about forget about it. One device I didn't show is a press. You need some kind of a press to put the wheels back on. And once you push them on finger tight, then put them in the press and push them together until your handy NMRA gauge shows that you've got them the right distance. Now, occasionally you will still get binding because these engines are mass produced. And you may have to enlarge some of the screw holes in the side rods. I use a set of reamers. They're very different sizes. They're precision made. They're operated by hand, so you're not going to, unless you put them in a drill motor, you're not going to take too much off too quickly. And they're tapered, so you can, you don't need a specific size. You can just kind of ream it a little bigger. Now, to find out what's going on, when I'm putting an engine back together, I get everything set up, but without the motor, and then run it on a piece of glass. If everything turns over smoothly on glass, it's going to run right. But if there's a bind somewhere, you'll notice it right away. It'll lock up. And then the easiest way to find it is to just take a tweezer and start wiggling parts. They should all be loose except for the one, which is binding. Now, don't automatically assume, though, that it's a hole in one of the side rods, because I've had binds take place up in here with the crossheads and pistons. And sometimes these get bent in a little bit, and you've got the screws on the drivers interfering with the crossheads. I won't do that on a 440, but on other engines it could. So it's just a matter of working it out. And once you feel everything is running as smooth as it can get on glass, then continue putting it together. And one thing I should mention is that when I paint a locomotive, I take it all the way apart. I take all the side rods off and the drivers off and so on. And most of them are different colors anyway. And then just gradually built it up after I get everything to where I'm satisfied with the smoothness of the operation. Just put everything back together, and after they're painted, everything should run right. And as long as you have little bins to keep all the screws and parts together, and some sort of memoranda to know that this goes here, this screw goes somewhere else, you'll be all right. And if you have a propensity for dropping screws like I do, Northwest Shortline has an assortment of different length screws, and most sizes use the model locomotives. Or you can go to Amazon, and they have an assortment of screws which are a lot cheaper. Lubrication, of course, is important. I use LaBelle products. The 107 works well on bearings and sliding surfaces like crosshead guides. The 102 is a great gear oil. If you're working on a plastic engine, I'm told the 102 will attack the plastic. Northwest Shortline has Delrin gearboxes, which don't get attacked, but others might. So if I'm doing a plastic engine, I use the 106, which is designed for that. There's other lubricants too. These are just the ones that I happen to have on hand. And I think I bought a set back in 1975, and I'm still not out of them yet. Now, weighting, as we were talking earlier, the amount of weight you have in a locomotive determines its pulling power. And it needs to be over the drivers. So if you take an American, you've got two big wheels here, which are your drivers, obviously, and then you have a four-wheel pilot truck. Putting weight in the boiler over the pilot truck will overbalance these things and actually lift the rear wheels off the track. It may not be so much as you can see, but it will lift them. It'll have an upward lift component that will result in less pulling power. So you should try to get it all over the drive wheels, or at least balanced. If you have some up front, you better have some in the back to keep everything balanced like a seesaw. So you can see some of the weights here between the drivers. I put weights up in the cab, usually end up painting them black, and nobody really notices. I've even been known to put weights up here to counterbalance stuff. This too is another thing, a compromise. It doesn't look like anything except a gigantic electric motor sticking out the back of the cab. And if this bothers you, or you want a detailed back head, then you've got to use smaller motors so you can push them further in the cab or push them in the front of the boiler, or any of the other things you can do to hide them. Again, I accept this as a compromise because it's an operating layout. I want the engines to look reasonably good and run very well. So
You're
that's
here.
why. Someone have a question?
No,
Oh, okay.
that was a great
And-
point.
Big pardon?
No, that was a good point. Thank you.
Oh. So it's a matter of compromise, a matter of choice.
Right.
Again, this is not the end all, it's just the way I do it. And it seems to work for me, so.
Right. I always ask myself, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I always ask myself, can I live with it?
Well, that's really what it boils down to.
Yep.
I mean, if you could live with 25 car trains and the engine in one town while the caboose is leaving the last town, that's another
Right.
compromise. And that's we do them all the time. Now, what kind of weights? Engines usually come with lead weights. And they work all right. Most of my engines have lead weights in them. But as I build up more engines, I'm starting to use tungsten weights.
Yes.
Tungsten is about 75% denser than lead.
Where do you get it?
Ah, I'm glad you asked.
He's the only one that has a source for it, Rhett. It's a setup.
No, it's not for me. These are
Stop it,
weights
Tom.
that are used in Pinewood Derby cars.
Can you say that again, please?
They're used in Pinewood Derby cars.
Okay,
They're kinds of Cub Scouts make.
yeah,
Yeah,
You
and
can find them on Amazon.
you could and you can find them in any number of places online that specialize in Pinewood Derby car stuff.
okay.
But the Phoenix even makes them. And the ones I use are 3/8 inch in diameter. And this seems to be a standard size. They come in different lengths: 1/2 inch, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16 of an inch.
Damn.
And you can glue them together. Don't figure you're going to cut them, however. You will never get a blade to go through them.
Right.
And I wore out 2 grinding wheels trying to cut through one. So I decided, okay, I'll just mix and match until I get the closest length that I want, and we'll go from there.
Quick question, Don.
Yeah.
Are these are magnetic, right? So they have to line up a certain way?
No, they're not.
Okay.
magnetic. I just use canopy glue to glue them together.
Excellent. That's great.
It works. And then put a little bit of caulking compound in the boiler and just drop it in the boiler, and it holds it in place. If I need to take it out for some reason later, the caulk separates fairly easily. Now, as well as these basic sizes, you can also get them in spheres. They're about 1/8 of an inch. You can get them in these teeny tiny discs, and you can see about what they offer. It even comes into a putty, which is about the consistency of modeling clay, and you can push them into odd spaces that you couldn't get anything else into.
Love it.
So I just go through, if wherever you get them, they're all about the same. And if you do a Google search for find with derby car weights, you probably have a lot more variety than on Amazon. Maybe not. Do a search, no problem finding the things.
Excuse
Steve,
me.
that putty's also going to be 75% more dense than lead.
For the same spot, yeah. It's probably not going to be quite as much. But it's a lot denser. It's kind of like putting a powder. Some people have taken a tungsten powder, mixed it in with some type of glue, and then put that in the spot. It hardens up, and you've got the equivalent of putty, except you can't take it out easily.
Is it that much heavier?
About 75% more heavy for a given amount.
Wow, that's
So more
not-
weight gives you more pulling power. It also gives you better electrical contact, and that's what these little engines
Yep.
need. So
On the, oops, sorry. I was just gonna say on the putty,
Yeah.
that's what fishermen use to weight their line. So if you don't find it anywhere else, check a fishing supply store.
there you go.
Good, good. Thank you, Dan.
I'm not a fisherman. I didn't know that.
Good toss.
There you go.
Typically, a steam locomotive picks up current from the drivers on the right side of the engine and from the tender trucks on the left side. That's been the typical pickup. If you wonder why diesel locomotives run so much better, all the wheels are doing the pickup.
Right.
And that's one of the big things. So your path of electricity on a tender specifically is you've got the wheels touching the rails, the axles and the truck side rods, then conduct the current to this joint, this loose swiveling joint between the trucks and the tender of the engine. All of those places are subject to corrosion, oil, whatever getting in there, offering intermittent contact. So my goal is to cut out all the middlemen, so to speak, and I want to contact right from the truck, right from the wheels in the truck, directly into the decoder. So what I do on engines is, first of all, I leave the right side as an electrical pickup. And that's usually a good connection. I don't put a wiper on the right-hand side drivers. I let the frame of the locomotive do that contacting for me. And you usually have enough, and the surfaces are big enough, that's not really a problem. On the left-hand side, I get these little guys, Grant Line carries them, or now what's called San Juan Model Company. And you drill and tap a hole, screw it into the cover plate on the bottom, and then you can run these wires out to pick up from the drivers with an electrical wire to run to your decoder or plugs or whatever. On the truck wheels, tender trucks, I solder some thin 8, 10 thousandths, 12 thousandths phosphor bronze wire that you can get from tishing. And I solder part of it directly to the tender frame. And then I use a small piece of printed circuit board. Actually, it's a piece of printed circuit board ties like you use in building fast tracks turnouts, available from Clover House. And I just got a small square and epoxy it onto the truck. Now I've got an insulated platform where I run 2 more wires. Actually, it's 1 U-shaped wire over to the normally insulated wheels. So now I've got pickups directly from the wheels to these mounting pads or to the truck. And then what I do then is I connect wires. I've got wires connecting the truck mounted pickups as well as the ones that are on the insulating plate.
Right.
And then those are all joined together in the tender and get connected to the decoder.
Wow.
And that gives you a little mess of wires there. And here again, if you're looking for a detailed underside, this is not going to be a good way to go, but I'm looking for operation, and I don't want people picking up my engines and looking at the bottom of them, or
Amen.
my cars either. Now, obviously, you got to join the engine and the tender together electrically to get all this to work. So I use these little PC board.
Right, plugs.
You got male and female.
Yep.
The female I put on the tender, epoxy them in place, and the male ends up being on a plug. Wow. And those work well. I've also used the Soundtracks connector. And you take this piece here, it gives you 9 positions for whatever you want to use them for.
Wow.
And that bolts onto the tender. This was designed for their Blackstone line of locomotives, which are plastic. And the reason I point that out is because all of these contacts, if you put them up against a metal tender bottle like a brass engine, you're going to have a problem. So you need an insulator between there and the tender. But then you can just drill one hole, tap it, and put a screw down here. Get a screw with a very small diameter head, though, or you could possibly break through some of the coating here and do your own shorting. This other piece goes to the engine. And then you
sorry, go ahead.
Okay. You can just solder the leads you want, as long as you keep them intact. Now, generally, I have about 6, I think it's 6, going between the engine and the tender. The right wheels, the left wheels, 2 for the motor, and 2 for the headlight. So that's 6. If you want a flickering flame in the firebox to go to another effect, then that's going to be another wire. But you got 9 on these things.
Rock and roll.
The only caveat I've got is that when you push this connector in, it's meant to be pushed in once. And getting it out can be a bear. So you don't want to try too many test fits or you're going to be driven nuts.
Question, Don. So that was one thing I wanted to hear is, so there's no way to minimize the force with which the receiver holds that plug, right? It's like you say, it's in, and if you got to take it off a few times, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. Now maybe George knows it better. Will you still here with us, George?
Yeah, I'm here. I was going to comment a couple of things. One, as you mentioned, the bottom of that circuit board, you're correct. If you put that up against like a brass frame, you're asking for short circuits. So I do recommend putting some sort of an insulator, maybe some washers, but that center hole is designed for the size of a 256 screw.
Yeah,
So,
and I've had no problems. I use a piece of cardboard.
yeah, that works too.
And
I mean, just some sort of insulator is what it is, but the idea was that it would allow it to pivot if you had a short wheelbase and tight radius curves.
Right.
But to answer your question specifically about the connector, usually what I'll do is I'll take a file and just kind of lightly hit it a little bit, because he is correct. Those type of connectors are typically a plug in once and you're kind of done. So tugging on those wires are eventually can pull out. And especially those type of wires, because they're designed with super flexible leads so that the tension between a locomotive and tender is at its minimum. So that way you don't have any, like, for example, if you had a locomotive and tender with a lot of thick wires, they make cockeye to each other. And so it kind of runs down the track a little cockeyed. And so those are super flexible. But the trade-off, the pin is that because a lot of that is in the insulation, if you tug on it too much, yes, it can pull the wires out. So if you hit it with a little bit of file, just to knock a little bit of the extra tightness off, but you still want to be able to lock it into place. And so that's kind of the key.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
But this was something that, long before I had the purple name on my shirt, that I was looking for, because, as some of you guys know, I like lights on my models. And so with adding things like class lights or firebox flicker and stuff like that, the 6 wires in some of the bigger steam locomotives just didn't do it for me.
Right.
And I got a couple from Broadway Limited long time ago, but they would only sell me 2 of them because they were obviously there for their service repair. So when I started at Soundtracks, I said, hey, this is something we need. And it became a really big seller for us over the years because it's only a 1/2 inch wide and it tucks very well. As you can see, it's hidden, and those black wires are chosen specifically to look like hoses or just connections
Right,
between
right.
the locomotive and tender. So,
Yeah, I was going to comment on that. Cool. Good.
And
Okay.
something else you see in that picture is the end of a decoder sticking out. And this tender was one where it looked like the real tender. This place in the center was to put your fuel. And around it was where the water went. Well, there's no place for decoder inside that tender.
Right.
So I stuck it there. I drilled a hole between the fuel portion and the water tank and passed wires through that, and then stuck the decoder there, painted it the same color as the tender, and then put a piece of cardboard or plastic on the top, and then covered it with coal. This way I could still take the decoder out without too much fuss, but yet you really didn't notice it that much.
I'm sorry, real quick. How did you say you attached the decoder to the tender? You did something with the water tanks.
I just drilled a hole between the water portion and the where the fuel goes.
Okay.
Some tenders are flat on top, figure you're gonna put wood or coal up
Sure.
there, so why bother? Others are very realistic, like this particular model was. I prefer the less realistic because then it saves me an awful lot of trouble. But anyway, it's what it is, so you live with it and work around it. So
There it is.
I think this is a better way to go in general than the plugs, because number one, you can use one plug. It's pretty straightforward. You get a scheme, like contact number 1 is always the right-hand rail and so on.
Yep.
And
Do you have
plug
a
only
speaker in
goes
there?
it one way.
Do you have a speaker in there?
Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
Before we leave tender to cab connections, let me throw in for 2 cents worth a neat engineering I don't know, feature that I've seen on Minitrix models from Germany, and the way they feed current from a tender to a locomotive is they will make a 3-piece drawbar, the top piece being a piece of brass, and then sandwiched between, and the bottom piece being a piece of brass, and sandwiched between styrene or an insulating material, and then a bushing in the pivot, and of course insulating washer under the deck between the bottom of your engine and tender deck and the drawbar. And then they solder the leads from the tender to the top and to the bottom respectively of brass or whatever conductive material you make, and your drawbar acts as your current feed,
Right.
which is a neat way to minimize some of the wiring between the tender and the back of the cab.
Well, a lot of brass locomotives,
board.
including this one here, had a very similar effect. It was a little simpler. You had a piece of brass with a springy wire attached to it. Part of it was attached to the engine, insulated from it, but a wire going from the motor there. And then a pin on the tender. Well, here, I'll go back a little bit. Yeah, you can see it right here. And then the pin on the tender comes in and this rests on it. It gives the same type of thing that you're just describing, maybe a little simplified, but the same idea. I've gotten away from that because my feeling is I'm trying to get rid of rubbing electrical contacts because that's where things are going to build up and
Right.
cause problems. I may be too cautious, may work fine, but I have a direct wire soldered connection between everything I can.
That's a good point.
I'm not saying you can't do it that way. I just chosen not to. I use DCC in everything. I think that was probably one of the best inventions that have come along in this hobby, especially for people with smaller layouts. I had one section with a, it was about 2.5 by 7 feet long. And we had 3 operators, all operating different trains in there. And you can't do that with a block system, just a straight DC. Anyway,
Right.
this is my choice. You can see some of the plays. This was the old TSU 750, of course, has been superseded now by the Tsunami 2. And your motor and flywheel. And here's a better view of how I mounted one type of decoder, the older 090s from Soundtrax. These are the first ones. They're the first ones I found that would fit in these locomotives. So
I don't think George was around then. That's an old one, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that goes back a lot of years.
Yeah, those were discontinued before I started working there over 12 years ago.
But they work. Now you can get a Tsunami 2 that'll fit in there flat, won't stick out as far. So obviously that, and it has much better features. Speakers. Well, if you're going to have sound, you need speakers. And you've got the traditional speakers like this. I think it's the 1-inch with a sound chamber. And that's good. Otherwise, you're not going to get any sound. It'll be very puny sound. And here's a similar thing with a rectangular profile. And I use both of these, but what I use now is the so-called sugar cube speakers. They're really speakers from things like iPads and cell phones. And I use mostly, I'd have to go back and check. It's like a 9 by 11 or 11 by 15 millimeter speaker. And it's, there's another one I use for smaller installations, which is about 9 by 11, I believe.
Which speaker do you like the best, Don? I mean, if you were going to recommend.
Sound sugar cube.
Yeah.
It gives you a better response all around.
Would that be OSI?
What, OSI?
The manufacturer of that speaker?
Oh, I have no idea who makes it.
Oh, got it.
We sell a mini cube speaker that's the 15 by 11 and the 9 by whatever, 9 by 13, I think he said. But I wanted to show you guys this here really quickly. Since we're talking speakers, I have in my hand here one of our mini cube 3s that are going to be coming down the line. And
You hold it up more, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this thing is so small.
Oh, my God.
This fits. I mean, that, and I'm actually very impressed with how big or how much sound comes out of this thing. And so I'm actually putting 2 of these in that 440 rebuild I'm doing.
Rock and roll.
There's a lot of people that make speakers, Soundtracks, as you said, carries them. I bought my first ones at a place called Streamline Back Shop. And they're very good. They have a whole bundle of things, including speakers like this guy, which are shaped to go into the front end of a boiler.
Right.
The sound is right underneath the stack.
Oh.
And I suppose if you have a 410-4 or something like that, that's a lot more realistic than putting it in the tender. With a 440, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, I don't think. But anyway, they have all sorts of different shapes, and it's just left to your imagination. how you want it. I have a friend who's built sound boxes from pieces of styrene. Yeah, Rhett.
I'm DC, I'm old school, but I know they make a sound machine that a ball bearing runs back and forth and adjusts the sound of the chuffs according to how fast the engine is actually running. I just don't know where to find them.
I don't either. I'm not sure I've ever heard of that system.
Does anybody know?
I know that Al did that on, on one or two of his locomotives. He rigged the flywheel so that, as you say, Rhett, the chuffs would be as the axle turned. But I don't know where he got them, or if knowing him, he probably made it up.
Well, if
No,
it,
these were
Right.
not connected to.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
They were not connected to a flywheel. They would just, you put it like in a passenger car behind the locomotive,
Oh,
and it would sense the speed based on how fast the train was running.
It's reading the back EMF from the motor. Is how
Well-
it's the adjustment. The system I use in N-Scale is a Bose sound system under the layout. And the Kaido sound system reads the back EMF and adjusts the sound to how far the loco is. from
that's
the
cool.
controller.
That's cool.
And that's readily available with the Kaido system. And our new controller operates off of your smartphone.
Got it.
Well,
So
what
Quick,
about,
I'm very modern, but
what about HO
prefer
scale?
UCC like you. I was an early adopter of digital, and I have digital scale locomotive.
Right.
Well, I'll say this, if it helps any, our sound systems are dual mode, which means they'll work in an analog DC environment as well as a digital. You're just limited on being able to like blow the whistle, ring the bell whenever you want. So you'll still get all those operational features, and with your analog layout.
That's where Kato beats you, because it'll do all of the sounds.
Are you talking about that Kato sound box?
Yes, that's what
We
I
make
use.
that.
Yeah, I run that through my Bose.
Yeah, we make that.
I love it. I love it.
Where does that get installed?
Next to your power pack.
No, I want something that goes in the train.
Well, that's where you would use an onboard decoder,
Yeah.
and you just enable analog mode and you run it around, and it's just based on changes in your DC voltage. Reddy, you can send me an email if you want, and we can have a deeper conversation over that.
Okay.
Perfect. Good. That was great. Thank you, guys. Okay, you still there, Don?
Who was I
One thing I'll
talking
mention
to?
is that
That was George, Rhett.
on the older decoders, one of the problems was synchronizing the chuffs of a locomotive with the actions of the wheels. You're supposed to get 4 chuffs per revolution of a driving wheel. And the only way to really ensure that came off was to use some kind of a cam or a card on the decoder picking up a contact. And one of the biggest advances, again, and with soundtracks I'll mention, and I'll also mention with Loc Sound decoders, they have really improved the decoders, so you don't have to do that. They take care of the electronics. They can sense the amperage and the voltage and everything. That it's pretty much, once you set it for one speed, it works for all of them. So fortunately, if you want to get synchronized chuffs, you don't have to put anything extra in the decoder. So I mean, besides the decoder. So anyway, moving along. Here's another thing that's become popular. And I don't have anything bad to say about them. I jokingly referred to my friends around here who put them in their engines as the "I don't want to clean my track" accessory. But seriously, they're a capacitor that will hold power. So if you have dirty track or you lose contact, the engine will keep running. I've got a Keep Alive in a rail car I've got, and I can turn the power down, pick up the thing, and the wheels keep running in my hand. Not for very long, 2 or 3, 4 seconds, which is enough to get across a dead spot of track. It'll also send it down, rolling down the landscape if it gets off, and but that doesn't happen very often. My biggest problem with them is by the time I get everything else in the tender, I don't have room, either because the clearances are tight enough that I can't get the decoder in, or there's a bar running across the middle of the tender, which is where it's attached to the tender frame, and there's no room to slide it in underneath. Now, the Soundtrax makes two. The original one here, and that's the one I was having trouble with. I've recently got one of their new ones, which is a little shorter device and should be easier. Again, with small tenders, it may still be a problem. But anyway, I'm going to give that a try. Now, with your Tsunami 2, Soundtrax provides a electrolytic capacitor that you solder in. I've taken tantalum capacitors, built up a stack with the same or greater capacitance, and wired that in. And the reason I do that is because sometimes the only place I have for a capacitor like this is down in the legs of the tender around the fuel space. And these capacitors are too large a diameter. And these are small enough that I could put them into a separate shape and put them in there. Of course, now that I've gone with sugar cube speakers, that has become less of a problem. But that is an available thing. And of course, other companies make their own version, whether they call it Keep Alive or Current Keeper or whatever. It's the same idea. So whatever decoder you're using, I would suggest using the capacitance situation, capacitor, Keep Alive, what do you want to call it, that goes with the decoder. Fred?
Right.
Can this be used with just DC?
No.
I can't. Well, yeah, you could do something like that. I'm not sure if these particular ones could do it, but then what happens? They used to, they probably still do in regular power packs, is they would put capacitors over the leads, the output leads, which would give you a momentum, because it would take time for the capacitor to charge before the engine would start moving, and then when you shut it off, the capacitor had to drain through the engine circuits.
Well, I have that on my my controllers.
Right. Now to put them in, if you put one in the Locomotive as well, you would probably get the same results. And it might work. I don't know. I'd have to fiddle around with it, but I don't see why it wouldn't.
I guess I could just Google it, Keep Alive capacitors for DC.
You just have to be a little careful with capacitors, because these are electrolytic, which means you have to connect positive to positive.
Right.
And the whole idea with an analog system is depending on which way the locomotive is going, you're changing the polarity of it.
Right.
So I'm sure there's some circuitry you would work up with a rectifier or something, but that would take some experimentation. Or as you say, Google it. Maybe somebody's probably already figured it out.
Wouldn't it be just easier to use a flywheel if you're using DC?
That was the original use of a flywheel, just to, again,
Yeah.
propel it across that section of dirty track or unpowered track. When I do my layout, I wire every piece of track
Hmm.
with a feeder, and all my frogs are powered, and I try to keep the track clean. So, you do any or all of those things, it's going to improve the situation.
Can you tell Tom that the
Uh-oh.
brass tank for cleaning track is really great?
I like it. I have one.
Yeah, see? There
Oh,
you go,
God.
Tom. There you go.
This is, okay. Okay, personal attacks are not allowed.
It's not an attack. Not an
Oh, that's
attack.
another
It's a
thing.
helpful hint.
I've used
I
this.
know.
You're talking about the brass tank that you put in.
Right.
Yeah.
As a pan.
Uh,
Have you used one and found it unsatisfactory?
no, I think it's a different one. It's not the one that has just a cylinder in the middle. I don't think. Is it, Rhett?
No, it's the one that's got pads with springs and it's very heavy.
Right.
Well, let me get the name of it. Hang on.
Because that's something everybody needs to clean their track periodically, regardless of all this stuff.
Yeah. Being the fact that it's my period, I have manual labor take care of that. It's just, I don't have a crew, so we know where that lands.
I mean, the Hispanic guy.
Every once in a while, he has one of his slaves do it.
Well, I'll go on here while Rhett's digging it up.
Actually, it's right in front of me, but I had a towel over it. It's called.
Oh, I'll hold it up so we can see.
It's the CMX.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one I've used.
Looks like a tank car.
Yeah. I don't know where I put the damn thing.
That's all right. I think we know what you meant, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah.
CMX. Looks like a
Have you used that, Tom, and found it unsatisfactory?
The one that I found unsatisfactory was the one that has the brass cylinder, just a cylinder in the middle of the car.
Oh, yeah.
And I still have to go over and clean it.
Okay, that's a different one then.
That's the center line car.
Yes, thank you.
I use a center line behind the tank car to mop up the dirt I've loosened with the solvent.
I don't know why I do these, like I said, probably every time, so apologies. But every time I do this, you guys got, I've got 3 more projects lined up, so what the heck?
That's the point of doing it. You learn things. Everybody learns things.
I love it.
And my last thing, I wanted to show you another engine. This is an inspection locomotive. It's a 424. In this case, it has a Loc sound decoder in it because it's the only one that would fit. Got a sugar cube speaker, extra pickups, phosphor bronze sliders in both rails, a little extra weight in the cab.
Looks like the Star.
It is. It's a model of the Star.
That's the Zoom.
Is that the brass one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sold mine. Yeah.
But it does. All these things do make a difference.
Oh, yeah.
That's gorgeous. Well done, man. Thank you. Hey, Don, is there one question I have is, what was one of the things you learned most about doing this with your locomotives? You probably mentioned it. I had to step away a couple of times. So if this is something already, guys, excuse me, but it seems like the most important thing is to at least have the tender wheels connected in such a way, like with your wipers. I thought that was a brilliant idea, what you used with the board and how you cut them to shape to fit in the sides of the side frames. So I guess I'm answering my own question.
Well, the thing is, it's a lot to do. I do all of these things on my locomotives because it works for me. Uh, the more you do, there's probably things I don't do that I could be and don't know about. But the more you do, the better things run. And I think one of the reasons that well, I guess you'd say, Kansas City, just to give you an idea, there must be there's about 35 operating model railroads.
Right.
And I don't have a problem getting people to come over and operate. And so, and I think a lot of it is because one of the biggest complaints most guy has, if the track works crappy and the engines don't run, then I don't want to come back. So people keep coming back. So I must be doing something right, I guess.
Right.
So anyway, that's
You know what?
me.
Could
Hey,
you
could
just,
you
could
do
you,
me a favor?
Hmm.
Could you click out the share, click out of your share screen?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Also, can you bring me up? Look, there.
oh, there it is.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the same one I use.
Right.
They're great. They're great.
I have a couple of questions for you, Don.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, you have that plastic wheel quarter. What is that, a particular brand?
That's Northwest Short Line as well.
They offer the one in plastic.
Yes.
Okay.
The one of them costs like $200, and the plastic one costs considerably less, like in the
Okay.
$30 range. So,
Okay. Second question I had, I've noticed this in a lot of steam locomotives.
before you go ahead, TC, one other thing is Northwest Short Line changed hands recently. They may not have all the tools up. I know that Micromark makes some of the some equivalent tools. So you might check there if Northwest doesn't have it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, well, no, that's good information. My second thing is I've noticed, well, on the Bachmann engines I've gotten so far with the DCC, but I've also noticed it in YouTube videos, is that the sound of the engine going is great. The bells have great, and the whistles are, pathetic. Are other people experiencing that, or? But the whistles just don't sound like the whistles I've heard when you go to ride on a steam engine. They're just so anemic.
I think first of all, one is your choice of whistles. If you get a Tsunami Steam 2 and you can't find a whistle that works, I don't know what to tell you. You're looking in the wrong place because they have a wide selection. But
yeah,
I think a lot of YouTube videos are made with a cell phone, and I don't think you get a good quality on whistle. I have an engine, for example. I made a short video to show a friend of mine, which is a whole completely different story. He said, "What's with the whistle? It sounds like crap." And I said, "Not in person it doesn't. It sounds exactly like I want it to sound." And I would say it's more a limitation of this, wherever it is, this guy, than it is the decoder.
right.
Well, even though my videos were with my cell phone, they sound as crappy in person as they do.
DC, I'll tell you that if you got the factory installed sound in that one,
Yeah.
that's a sound value decoder, which is based off the original Tsunami, and it's a very, for lack of a better term, I'll use the term cheap decoder. So it's basically Bachmann came to us and said, "We want chuff chuff woo woo ding ding, make it happen." So we did.
I've got two of your new decoders to put in, but
Yeah, it'll be
I haven't got
a
around
night
to
and day
that
difference. It'll be a night and day difference, I'll promise you.
Okay.
Because one of the other things, like we talked about in the past, you can even add echo and reverb to the whistle sound too. So it gives it a lot more depth of tone also, not just the playing of the recording.
Okay.
But I agree, that sound value whistle that's on that 440 is just absolutely terrible.
I mean, the bell's great.
Um,
And some of that may be also a factor of the frequency ranges, because these small speakers are really strong. I mean, they're tweeters by audio standards, and so they're really strong at the high frequencies, which a bell is, and the whistle may be more lower tones, and so you lose some of that in the limitations of the speakers.
Okay.
Don't forget the whistles pre-1900 were a different sound. Like they might only had one chamber or something, too. So
Yeah,
it may
that,
not sound like the NKP 765 or something.
they're going to sound a little better than a Creeder's popcorn whistle, but mostly one tone. Some of them
Yeah.
three tone if the engineer was proud enough that he wanted to spend his own money and put a nice three-tone chime in it. And I've got various whistles on various engines just to reflect that. So
Yeah.
it happens. And like I say, I don't know how many whistles are on these decoders, George. Tsunami Steam 2.
The Tsunami Steam 2 has 90 whistles to choose from, 54 bell recordings, 10 exhaust chuffs, 10 air compressors, and so forth.
It's fabulous.
So there you go. What can I say?
Don, I've got a comment for you.
Please.
I've been starting to scratch build a locomotive, and I've been using the British wheel sets. So I don't know if they have them in HO, but it has a square. See that?
Mhm.
Romford wheel.
Comfort.
So the axle that goes in there is already quartered for you. Well,
Yeah.
Yep.
you know, you just rotate it 90 degrees
Right.
and you don't have to worry about quartering it. I have it all sitting in a little.
Ready to put together bag? Is that the
Well,
first of your
I
kit?
set this. I am working on expanding my layout, so my local scratch build is on hold, and it's just, you know, all those little mechanical parts in there. But this is what it's going to look like, by the way.
They do have the Romford wheels in HO scale.
Oh, right.
There's the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can get those, on ScaleLink, limited ScaleLink.
yeah, so I would look at the British and see what the Brits got. The Brits are way ahead of us in scratch building locomotives.
Yeah.
A friend of mine is using the Romford wheels on an HO scale 260 48-inch drivers. So that's below the size that most Civil War era locomotives used. So you shouldn't have any problem getting those wheels if you decide to use them. Yours
think-
have the plastic centers, Bernie.
Say that again?
Do your
Oh.
wheels have the plastic centers?
Yeah, it's a steel wheel,
Right.
plastic spokes, and then a brass insert, and then the drive rod just screws in there. So it may not be, you know, they have a lot of different ones, but it may not be the exact number of spokes. I think this is off by one spoke from what I need.
It's better making your own.
Well, you could
You're right.
3D print, you know, I bought a 3D printer. I have a Formlabs 3 now, and I can print just about anything. And I could conceivably print a new insert for that, but I'm not going to.
The only problem that I found with that is this friend of mine with the moguls, the center drivers were blind. So he sent me the wheels to turn the flanges off. And you have to take extremely light cuts.
Yeah,
End up turning the flanges all the way off the
that's
center.
that's not bad. This is steel. It would be hard to turn with a plastic center.
It is.
You would probably have to make some kind of clamp to clamp onto the steel and not the plastic.
But, you know, some of the guys who sell Romford style drivers do give you the option of getting blind drivers on special request.
Yeah.
I guess he didn't know that. I wasn't aware of it.
Mhm.
Anyway, it got the job done. It wasn't that big a thing. It just took very light cuts, and I've got a jig I can hold drivers through the
Right.
axle hole. So
Right.
and
You
I've
can do it.
got 4
by-
rows that have blind drivers. So it's probably a moot point.
Any other questions for Don? Okay.
Don,
Nice.
have you ever experimented with track sliders?
I've had mixed results with that.
What is that? What is that for the novice?
It's a phosphor bronze
Oh, wiper.
twister
Kind
that goes down,
Oh.
contacts the track.
Right.
And some of them I put on, and the engine actually didn't run as well as without them. And I'm not sure exactly why. I eventually turned it off, got rid of them, and the engine ran better, so I was happy. Didn't ponder too much.
When you
Others,
say better, you mean how better? In what way?
it's smoother
Ah,
without the wipers. But I'm not saying that's not a condemnation of the wipers, because on the little inspection locomotive you saw there at the end, I put wipers on there because I needed to have more pickup or it wouldn't run at all. That is a terrible engine because it was designed to short out. I'm sure they didn't design it that way, but I'm sure to assemble it, that is the net result. So I had to figure out a way to insulate the thing so that wouldn't happen. But anyway,
right.
I say I have mixed results. I have an engine that's so light, I thought it had to have wipers. And now I think the wipers are strong enough, they lift the engine off the rail. So
Right.
I'll have to go back and try that again. But
I got a question for Bernie. So depending upon, I guess, the ease with which it is to print out this locomotive you're doing, and you might have mentioned this before, but is there a possibility that you would plan to make these available in kits?
Who wants one? I mean, an O scale you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
It is possible. I would have to develop it a little bit more.
Okay. Well, it's like anything else. I asked that because you never know what's possible, and maybe there are some people that might be interested, or just where your head's at with that. Because I think it's more groundbreaking work.
Well, one of the things I'm hoping for is that it's a quieter gearbox, and the gearbox is this right here, which is, I'm hoping it's quieter than the one. My O scale locomotives are very noisy. The
SMR?
There's a lot of noise in those gearboxes, but I don't know what the pulling power is going to be. This fits. It goes this. Here's the engine. The motor is going to go in there. It's hard to do right now because I have this is Eric's design, or the three. It's compensated, I guess. So all the weight is bearing on this little wire right here. See that little wire?
Yep.
So it's screwed in at the front, and it just touches on that wire, and then the axles float in a thing like this.
Oh, wow.
So they see they're articulated. The axles can actually rotate independently of each other.
Wild.
Yeah. So hopefully it'll track. Hopefully it's going to track well.
Right.
But the reason I mentioned that is the firebox down here is empty. So this could be filled with tungsten.
Mm-hmm.
And all that weight will be right between the wheels. Now, going back to Don's point about the balance, you have to find the center of gravity of your loco once it's assembled, and you want to put the weight on, the driving side of the center of gravity. So you might be able to go a little bit forward if your center of gravity is forward.
Right.
But anyway, this engine is the Leech. It's a little longer. It has a nice long wheelbase, so this big motor will fit. And with Don's comment about flywheels, I left this little shaft on there. But that little shaft is actually going to stick through the
firebox.
The back of the firebox, the control panel there, whatever that's called. So I'm hoping that it won't need a flywheel. I can just trim that off, and then I can have a nice cab. Otherwise, I would have a flywheel in my cab.
Right.
It wouldn't be bad because it'd be hard to see. It's down low.
Right.
Anyway, we'll see. But I put this on hold because I have to get my expansion ready for an article by the end of March. So I'm doing layout expansion and a few other things like taxes.
Who's the article?
What's the article for, Marty? I mean, Bernie?
Bernie.
I wrote, that article, I had promised an article to Model Railroader on like lessons learned on my railroad after so many years, 12, 13 years. And I kind of forgot about it. And he sent me a note, said, hey, where is that? So I worked on that. I actually it was almost done. So.
Cool.
Question, a little off topic for you, Bernie.
Yeah, and the balloon, I've been working on the balloon because the reason I'm working on the balloon is if the balloon is not going to do like my blocking, like I talk about in that video I did, then I may put a little cove up. So I wanted to sort that out before I got too far along.
Hey, Bernie, I went up when at the very beginning to look in my library. I couldn't find it. Do you have the book on? So there's a book out there on Civil War ballooning.
Say again, Civil War and the what?
There is a book out there on ballooning in the Civil War.
Oh, I don't have a book on it. No, I just have.
I will look for it. I've got it somewhere up in my, or I couldn't find it.
Well, DC, I tried to build. I did build the kit that you sold to me.
Yeah.
And then I did not like the ropes on it. So I sanded off all the ropes, and that worked okay. And then I said, well, let me try to put some flat spots on it so I can tuck it in the corner nice and tight. And when I did that, it became very flimsy. And so I decided to build another one out of styrofoam. And I took the bottom of the one you sold me, and it's on that balloon over there. And I made another one out of styrofoam because I want the sides flat so that it'll go in the corner as tight as I can get it.
Right.
Okay.
And that'll also keep it like vertical and all that. So this is actually a piece of, it's a styrofoam ball that I got at Michael's with DC's, the bottom of DC's balloon on here. I saved that part of it.
You merged it well.
So DC, that cost me $30.
That looks about right.
My friend who's a doctor says it looks like a sperm.
I was going to say you could have taken some of that great stuff foam and put it inside the original balloon. It would have given it stability.
You know, after I ripped it apart, I said, "Oh, I could have just put a piece of wood in here."
Right.
You know, sometimes you're just not thinking. And the other thing, I drilled in. Your balloon had 32 holes, and the real balloon had more, so I put 64 in.
Oh yeah.
That was way too many. It's just gonna be too much of a, pain in the patootie. So I'm back to 32. Well, this one doesn't have the holes yet, but it's pretty light.
That's cool.
That's cool. That is cool.
Everybody says you're going to make it go up and down.
What's up, Chip?
Which one of the books are you referring to? War of the Aeronauts?
I can't quite see it.
Okay, military ballooning during the Civil War.
Yeah.
Or the Balloonist, which is about
Oh my God.
Apollo and his experiments. So
Well, I've got the
library.
Chip, I've got the middle one you were talking about.
So a trip to
Military-
Amazon is
military
next,
ballooning?
right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Military ballooning. All right, well, I better get that book then.
Yeah, they're probably available in the Alexandria Library, if I recall, but
By John.
They're a click away.
Hey, Bernie, I've got a question for you. The partial equation that's on your shirt, what does that signify? It looks like a bunch of nonsense to me.
Okay, what does that equal?
Well, mass.
Equals it.
M.
Mass.
C.
Imaginary.
I.
T. Oh, okay, got it. MIT.
MIT.
That's very good. I like that.
Anyone who went to MIT can read this shirt.
Wow.
This is equals MC squared. The square root of -1 is I, and the ideal gas law, PV over nRT, or PV divided by nR equals T.
Well, anybody who's gone through engineering school ought to be able to figure it out. But
And also, look at this, established 1861. What was
couldn't
going
see
on
that
in
part.
1861?
Charleston?
The Civil War, MIT NRT was established during the Civil War. I never realized that until I got this shirt.
Oh,
Boy, the things you can learn in this Zoom call is unbelievable.
yeah.
Die a happy man.
That's so good.
When my children were little, and we used to drive around in the car, I said, I'm going to teach you thermodynamics. And I taught them PV equals nRT. And then we would sing it, PV equals nRT, PV equals nRT. That is the ideal gas law.
That's good. You are quite the educator for your kids.
I'm a nerd. What can I say?
You know, I didn't realize I was one until there was a woman I was dating, and I was telling her about all this Civil War stuff I was getting into. This is about 25 years ago. And she knew me as a drummer and a poet. And so I started talking, and she just stopped and she looked at me and goes, you know, you're a nerd, right? I said, what? She says, you're a nerd. I said, whoa, excuse me? So evidently I wasn't really clear on that. But after she explained what a nerd was, I thought, I'll be damned, I sure am.
Hey, nerds rule now. We're
I
in charge.
know.
Bill
I guess not
Gates,
qualified.
Elon Musk, those guys are all nerds.
Yep. They're walking around with some fine ladies too. Yes, they are.
Did you say
Okay.
you were a drummer?
Yeah.
Yep, so was I.
Oh, okay. So you'll be on after everybody leaves anyway, so we'll talk.
Well, guess what?
What?
You guys are drummers.
Oh, yes.
I worked with the most famous drummer of our day, Keith Carlock. He's on 2 of my records.
That's right. Yes,
He did
yes.
all those Steely Dan records, and I worked with him for 2 albums. And 8 years we worked together.
Oh, that's great. That must have been a joy. That's cool.
That was a joy.
Yep. That's great.
My pay wasn't a joy.
Right. Oh, well, the price we pay, and we're willing to live with it.
Wrong agent.
Yeah. So, any final comments before we end our bi-monthly Zoom?
I've got one question again. Can you repeat where I was supposed to go for a sound system that worked for just DC?
Oh, with George.
Okay.
Soundtracks.
Yeah, send me an email, georgeb@soundtracks.com, and I'll give you all the options.
I have a question for Jerry. Jerry, are you on there? I thought I saw
Hello,
him.
I'm here.
How are we doing on the wagons?
Oh,
Good question.
O-scale
About
wagons.
nine-
Let me rephrase that.
That's
I'm
cool. Yeah.
about 95% done, and then I got buried in my new job, and so I've been I come up for air once in a while.
What's your
Haven't had a chance to
job,
do-
Jerry?
Pardon?
What's your new job?
I'm starting another company called Turnkey Fabrication.
And boating season's about to begin.
Oh,
We're not going to see those wagons for at least, I don't know, a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
I'm
Jerry,
tinkering around with I started tinkering with a freight car too, with a 1850s vintage house car
Yeah.
with the platform ends, and
right.
I'm working on drawings in O scale on that.
Jerry, you know the old saying though, work is the curse of the modeling classes.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things I looked at as an excuse to get one of them Jim Burns saws to cut the wood.
Got it.
Yeah, sounds like me.
Good.
Any excuse to buy a tool.
How expensive is it? Excuse me?
Pardon me?
How expensive is that tool to cut the wood?
Oh, that saw, that's about $500,
Okay.
but it cuts to 1/1000th of an inch.
Whoa.
And you work in hardwood with a saw like that.
Can you work in basswood?
Oh, you wouldn't want to work in basswood. It's too fuzzy. When I did ship modeling, I always worked in apple or birch. I tried maple a little bit, but maple is really, really hard.
Yeah.
But birch actually works pretty well. And if you want darker wood, you use cherry or walnut.
Well, what is the name of the saw again, Jerry? What is the name of the saw you're talking about?
If you Google Jim Burns, Byrnes, micro, I think you call it a micro table saw. It's a little table saw, but it's all precision machined, and it's a fantastic little saw.
That's one of your passions.
Yeah,
I know that.
There it is.
you got it.
Yep. I don't know if you guys can see it though.
Yeah, if you go to speaker view, you'll fill the screen. No, not you. If everybody does, if they want to see you.
Speakers. Can you
Yeah.
see my, but it's blown out. It's too white.
Yeah.
Yeah, forget it. Just Google it. I see it. It looks like it would take your finger off pretty quick.
Yeah.
I got my son for Christmas a saw stop table saw because he wanted to do kitchen cabinets. I didn't want him cutting his fingers off.
Yeah. But that saw's got micrometer adjustments on it, so you can really dial it in tight.
And my son has one of those too. So
yeah,
they're very nice. They're also extremely heavy.
Yeah.
He bought a carriage to move it around on. After he'd gotten the saw, the instructions, assemble the carriage with the wheels on it and everything, the dolly, and it says, use 5 people, 4 to lift and 1 to guide the carriage underneath it. He and I did it by ourselves with a little help from his wife.
Oh.
But it was kind of one of those, one had to know about leverage, I guess, with fulcrums and long poles.
Well, I'm just thinking the laser cutter is accurate to about 1/1000th of an inch, but the laser dot itself is about 10/1000ths of an inch, roughly. So it's
the kerf.
Yeah, the kerf, and it chars a little bit, so you lose. So you end up, when you draw a line, you have to plan on losing 5/1000ths on each side of the line.
Yeah.
Place your lines on the outside though, and you won't have that problem.
Yeah, you can offset them. That's in very thin material. If you start cutting thicker material, the kerf is bigger because it burns more.
V-shaped and
it actually gets a little taper to it also.
Yeah.
Tons of fun, but I did get a Form Labs. Jerry, you have a Form Labs, right?
I have a Form 2.
I got the Form 3, and it's amazing quality. It's just slow.
Yeah,
super slow.
It's like watching grass grow.
I printed a thing for my brother, and it was 4 separate runs, and it took a total of 71 hours.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So you just let the thing run for 21 hours at a time.
Yeah.
It's just it's you can set it to 25
microns.
0.25 millimeters. Which I don't even know how many microns that is.
That's 25 microns. Yeah.
Is 25 millimeter? Is a millimeter a micron? No.
Millimeters, 40,000ths of an inch.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of course, so that'd be 10,000. So it's coming up 10,000ths of an inch at a time.
Wow. Now I know why I had to repeat mathematics.
It's funny, the 3D printers, the software prefers millimeters, and those of us that are used to inches get a little messed up.
Yeah, the people that write the software, and I think the people that design the machine are European, and it's kind of irritating because when you're working with Civil War stuff, you're working in inches.
Right.
And I've got mine working, and it's converted, but the thing that the Achilles heel of the Formlabs printers are the resin tray, and the fact that you either have to have a really expensive one or you have to replace the thing like every 2 liters of resin, and they're expensive. And the other thing is you can't use generic resin. You got to use the Formlabs resin.
Right.
And I've been looking at those other printers out there. There's the Elegoo Mars is one of them, and there's another one. They're both about in the $300 range, and they don't have all the canned software, and they don't have the preheater, and they don't have the automatic fill in the tray, but they're very inexpensive. They'll operate to 25 micron resolution, which is some of the stuff they do is just as good as I get off my Formlabs. But
Yeah, Jerry, I bought one of those. I bought a Anycubic Photon, and
yeah,
I gave it away. After 1 month, I gave it away.
really?
It's a toy. It's 50% of my prints were failures.
I've got an Elegoo Mars. I've been extremely satisfied with it. I was printing HO scale wagon chassis, which was, built up the beams for the chassis, plus the fifth wheel, plus the springs, all in one print. Consistently good behavior with the Elegoo. So
How much is that?
it cost me $250, and I think it's come down.
Wow.
Yeah, they're cheap now. They're ridiculously cheap.
Whoa.
The difference is the resin is about $50 a liter instead of $150 a liter.
Right.
And
Well,
that's really the cost of printing, is the cost of the resin and the cost of the tray.
I bought that Anycubic Photon. It cost me about $150, maybe 160 with free shipping. 50% of the prints were failures for various reasons, all kinds of reasons. I had to replace the FEP 3 times. It leaked 1 time.
Mhm.
And I said, when I'm doing a 20-hour print and it fails half the time, I said, so I went and bought the $3,000 machine, and I've had 100% success. I have not had a print fail yet.
They work, but they're slow.
They're slow and they're expensive, but time is money.
Yeah, no, I got a son that works at a die shop where he runs a Stratasys, and man, that thing is fast. It's got the same resolution as the Formlabs, but he'll print something in an hour that would take me a 24-hour run.
And it's what, 60 grand?
Yeah, they're like 120 grand. You're not going to buy one and put it in your house, but it's an incredible machine. But the interesting thing is when he's running dies, I can sneak little railroad parts in the corners.
See, I was going to ask you, what's the trade-off here? I'm thinking, let's see, you got family connected to this. What's the exchange rate for you? And you've already got it played.
Yeah.
So are you and your son very close?
Yeah, we see each other maybe once a month.
Do you think he'd have the same kind of inclination to someone who was like one of your real best friends?
Well, depends on what you need done.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I was kidding. That was cool. But the fact that you're offering, I'll follow up with you on an offline email.
Well, you can go to Shapeways. They have machines like that and get them printed too. So I had some parts printed from Shapeways. They're pretty good printers. They were pretty quick. It's like
you had what
$50.
printed?
This was, I had Shapeways. Shapeways printed this. And it was $50.
Oh.
So it's an O scale size frame.
And that was a one-off just for you?
Yeah, and I had to make changes, and that's one of the reasons I'm getting my own machine, so I can keep making it,
Integral changes or intermediate or.
It's hard, even with the 3D drafting, there are just some things that I didn't get right. I just screwed things up. It's hard to plan it all out in one shot.
Bernie, you're losing your touch, man. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You got too much time on your hands.
Since I've retired, I've become so busy, I don't know what to do. I don't know how I got anything done, before when I was working. It's amazing.
Oh God, isn't that the song? Yeah.
But one little point, you guys, if you're interested in metallic paints that look very realistic, check out AK Interactive's paints. These brass parts are painted with AK Interactive, and I put real brass alongside them. Here's a polished. These are real brass parts that I got from who's the guy that makes Precision. So this bell shined up real nice. But if you put those next to this regular brass,
Oh, yeah.
they look the same. So look into AK Interactive metallic paints, and they're a based. They thin with what are they thin with? They sell the thinner. You use their thinner, and it airbrushes perfectly. So I recommend that. So anyway, a little tip from me. Since Tom says I'm losing my touch.
Yeah, right.
I'm getting old, man. I returned 65 last week. I got my shot.
Wow.
I'm vaccinated, baby.
Yeah, I just got mine. I got mine yesterday.
All right.
I got mine last Friday.
All right, good job. We're all vaccinated. We're going to be ready. We can start doing the group meets again.
I was wondering, maybe we should think. You think the fall? Would it be too premature to think about that, or maybe we've already? I don't know.
Well, we're going to hold the Middle Atlantic Railroad prototype meet September 9th. So we're planning on having an in-person meet in Baltimore. So.
Oh, George, you're going to be there?
Yeah, I'm planning to be there.
Yeah, George has got. You're gonna come early and check out my railroad and fix all my decoders for me.
See, I tell you, he's almost an attorney. He gets you going in today, you get excited, then he drops in that last little rider, and it's like, wait, what was that?
I'll give him. He can stay in my spare bedroom too. I'll let you know.
His wife makes great cookies.
We'll program for food and board, room and board.
Well, speaking of that, DC, I need your address.
I emailed it to you a little earlier this evening.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think it's at your Yahoo email.
Yahoo.
RhettTylerBand@gmail.com.
I don't know. I'll have to check.
Okay. I'll check.
How many points will I get if I articulate my bell so that it actually does this while it's being rung?
Ooh, that's not.
Charlie, we got to get Harold. Brother Harold has to work on this for us.
Hey, there is a guy in Australia who does that animated stuff in ON3, and he actually animates the bell and he times the rotations of that motor to match the ring rate of the bell.
There is room inside the boiler for mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Brother Harold could do that, couldn't he, Charlie? So whether or not he wants to.
He's got the machines for it.
He could.
That's
funny.
Let's see.
Yeah, Bernie.
Well, guys, I got to run. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for everything,
George.
Don. Great presentation.
Good night.
Appreciate it.
Great to see you, George.
We'll see you guys later. Thanks.
Thanks,
So
man.
Quick question here. AK True Metal metallic paints, is that it?
Yeah, AK. It's a Spanish company, but they have distributors in the U.S.
Well, I found them and they've got a number of series of paints, and one of them is called True Metal Metallic.
Hang on a second, I'll go get it. I'll look it up.
Wax-based paints. That's got to be it.
You say wax-based?
That's what it says on the website.
Never heard of it. Wow.
What is it? True Metal. I wrote down interactive brass paints. Wrong.
AK True Metal Metallic.
True.
To wax-based paints to achieve incredible and realistic metal finishes. They can be applied by brush, cotton swab using your fingertip, or even by airbrush. Fitting the paint properly.
Extreme Metal, AK Interactive.
Extreme Metal.
Extreme Metal.
Oh, God.
They have two brass. They have two colors of brass. They also have several colors of silver for your boilers. So you got like gunmetal and steel. And they also have titanium and burnt titanium for airplanes. But these two brasses were pretty good. I ended up using regular brass, not the pale brass. The
So
pale
those
brass,
are thinner based, not water based.
they're not water-based. They have a thinner that you buy. It smells a little bit like turpentine. Let me see. What does this smell like?
Uh-oh,
Get a good sniff.
uh-oh.
No, it's not I don't know what it is. Does it say on here? You just buy the thinner from them when you get it, and it says enamel. It says enamel. So what would that be? Turpentine?
Yeah.
I also got a little mechanical paint shaker that's made from an old medical shaker. That thing's really good, by the way, in case you do a lot of acrylic painting. So I've been busy, but I
Yes,
miss
you
Joel.
have.
Joel, you got to get over here with your son, and we got to get we got some work to do on the railroad. I got to drive some spikes.
Okay. He's probably readily available.
I might have one other question. Does anybody know of a young Civil War reenactor or two? I'm looking for movie stars.
Oh,
Wow.
But I want young people. I don't want big fat old guys.
no,
Right.
no, no. These guys are in their 20s. They're the sons of the artist that did all this miniature stuff that just died, and I can't think of his name. He died about 2 years ago, and both his sons, they modeled for him for the Philadelphia main library as Minutemen. And he made them in bronze after he cast.
Oh,
Oh, you're talking. I know who you're talking about.
Ron something, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Is it Ron?
Brian, yeah. Brian Cameron knows him.
Yeah. I met him through Brian Camera, and his two sons would be perfect.
Yeah, well, I just need. I've got a big green screen, and I want to do some filming of people in front of the green screen, and then roll them into some of my videos I'm working on.
Okay.
In my copious spare time.
Well, they're the guys. Just ask Brian Camera.
I thought I saw Brian on tonight. Did he leave?
He was. He dropped off.
Briefly.
Okay.
Oh, he left?
Yeah, I texted him. We'll find it in a little while.
All right. Well.
Yes. We're good. It's funny. DC and I were exchanging chats, so we're in like, should we cut this? Should we? And I'm like, people are still here. They'll leave whenever they want. But I will say this is the official end, and feel free to hang out for a little bit if you want. Great to see you. I love you all. It's just so much fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, guys.
I'm going to say good night because I'm ready to